Well, this paper isn't about continuous auditing, it's about continuous assurance, but auditing is a small subsect of assurance, so I guess it is about continuous auditing too. So what is assurance? Well, the AICPA's Special Committee on Assurance Services defines it as independent professional service that improve the quality of information or its context for decision makers. This was in the paper. This is a big statement that they had that pretty much gives a little bit more of a specific definition to that. But effectively, assurance is when you hire an outside firm, like an auditing firm, to come in and whatever you want them to look at, they will look at and verify and validate. Just like they do with financial statements and auditing, they can do this with just about anything else. So what kinds of things would be subject to assurance checks? Maybe you have to release a statement to OSHA about your workers' standards or the number of hours you're expecting your workers to work. Well, then you get an assurance firm to come in and make sure that the statement you're releasing is in fact correct and the truth.
Correct.
So
Accurate.
accurate, yeah.
There's a big difference. It's a fair representation, it's a measurement of every type of thing. I always try to say fairly represent. And you notice in my list of things, I put materiality, but I didn't say fairly represent as my, but because if you come up with an opinion on cybersecurity, rating companies on 5 scales, they are not going to be exact and be an attempt to fairly represent. I just want to make another comment here to help Jamie, or not to help Jamie. Bob Elliott was the president of the AICPA, and before that, he created the Special Committee on Assurance Services and came out with, I can't remember, 60 or 70 potential assurance services, of which they chose, still can't remember, 8 or 9 of them, and they created task forces. And one of them was system reliability. So it was a computer type of thing. And I knew Bob for a long time, so I called him up and said, Bob, can I be on that committee? And I want to do a continuous auditing committee. He said, no, this should be system reliability. So I became, and we came up with a thing called SysTrust, which was an opinion at that time. But this was basically played to make accountants relevant in the century and create new services which would create more money to auditors. He also worked at that time on creating this concept of, they called it cognitor, which was basically an assurer of many things. And the moment he stepped down from the ICPA, 1-year tenure, they kicked it out. But the assurance services continued and created the SysTrust, WebTrust, and basically those disappeared after some time, but they are coming back. Okay, because this was very relevant, it's just Bob was hired at this time. You want to meet Bob? Bob is the chairman of my advisory board. Okay, he has been retired from KPMG for 15 years now. And the Car Lab has 15 years. So he was first chairman, continues being the chairman. Very dynamic, very intelligent guy, still totally on the ball, very, very strong. I always try to get him to come to the conferences. He doesn't come, but he always comes for advisory board meetings. Okay, and you ask him questions about this, he tells you what this would be in the future. And you see, I think the references there, there are a couple of Bob Elliott references, accountancy in the 21st century, etc. They are very interesting set of articles. He didn't vision exactly what the technology will be today, impossible to do that, but I think his ideas were on the right side. So, so that was it. And now the Assurance Services Special Committee became ASEC, Assurance Services Executive Committee. And I'm on that board now for I don't know how many years. And we are creating all these projects, these products, and the products now are starting to work. Let's see what happens with cybersecurity. And you'll hear more about this. And to embarrass us a little bit, some other countries are much ahead of the US in thinking about this.
So these are the three main components of assurance. The goal is to capture information that relates to the transaction, and then look at the environment that's involved. Then they want to monitor and analyze the transactions process and records to ensure that the information that's being given to them is in fact fairly representative of what they're trying to say. And then the final part of it is to communicate the outcome of the assurance engagement to whoever wants that information. So that's pretty much it. The idea of continuous, that was also defined in the paper a little bit. There were two kind of aspects to this. The feasibility of it actually being continuous. So can you use existing systems to collect the information? Are those systems reliable and things like that? Can you overlay these systems with a continuous assurance system? So have a continuous assurance system that becomes a part of an ERP system to allow you to do continuous assurance work. And could you be able to release these reports whenever necessary? That's another aspect of the continuous feasibility side. In terms of desirability of continuousness, is there actually a demand for people to be continuously assuring all these different statements? And do businesses really want to pay for this? For the ability, effectively what you're providing here is the ability to say, all right, well, we want to issue this statement today. You have a continuous assurance program embedded in our system. We can turn it around very quickly instead of waiting for you to come in and effectively do so-called audit of what we're trying to say. So is there actually a demand for this? Do businesses really want it? Do consumers really want it?
Can I add something here? Remember what we were just talking before about, do companies want to be audited? Okay, do the companies want to be continuous audited? Definitely, they have difficulty. The pink book that I sent you today actually has a survey we ran of the big four plus some companies. And what the survey basically said that the big four, none of them uses continuous auditing for external audit. But two of the four actually sell continuous auditing consulting to internal audit departments.
So now that we've kind of looked at the two aspects, continuous and assurance, why would a company want continuous assurance? Like Nicholas was kind of talking about. So the first big is it could be used for all different types of things, like OSHA reports, FCC reports. All of these could be generated pretty instantly if you had this kind of a system in place. You want assurance products because you want to form better business ties. For example, Walmart vets its suppliers very, very heavily. So if you are a supplier and you want to do business with Walmart, having a continuous assurance system in place would allow you to turn around to Walmart and say, look, everything we're saying is real here. We don't have to wait 3 months for another company to come in and say that that's the case. To raise capital, if you have insurance reports, you can use them with banks if you're trying to take out loans and incur debt for your company. And just for general decision-making purposes within the management of the company and things like that. Also, it has an advantage because it could decrease the cost of capital. If you have a continuous assurance program in place, the theory is that you're a better company and therefore the interest rates you may be getting charged on these bonds and loans will hopefully be lower than those that don't have these kinds of systems. And then finally, the idea that new systems need auditing. So if you have an ERP system in place, there's not a lot of work in the auditing realm that actually looks like, is this system actually operating correctly? And a continuous assurance program would hopefully fulfill that kind of need. So why would companies not want this, which is the other half of what Nicholas was trying to say. So if you start continuous assurance program in your company, and then you decide that for whatever reason, maybe it's too expensive or too much work, that you want to stop it, then there's a concern that that sends a negative signal to the market, and it will negatively impact your company value, because they believe, the market might believe, that there's a secret reason why you don't want to be continuously assured, and maybe you're trying to hide something. So that's an incentive not to start, so that if you want to stop later, you don't have to deal with that. It also could decrease competitive advantages that the company has. Having like continuous assurance services being provided to you could either eliminate some of the things that you want to do, if you want to, that may not come up in audits, that will come up into something like this. The loss of manager information asymmetry. So from a stockholder point of view, this is really good. But stockholders unfortunately don't get to make the decisions as to whether to implement a system like this. Management gets to make the decision. And if a system like this is in place, then the amount of information advantage that a manager has over the stockholder or other people within the business is decreased, because now you have a company coming in and validating everything that's going on. So management might be hesitant to put this into place. Litigation. This is more on the side of the company offering continuous assurance. You run into the issue of if I've installed a continuous assurance program and something goes wrong, I'm now responsible. This question is discussed a little bit more later on in the paper, and you guys who wrote the paper kind of said, well, yeah, litigation is a concern, but the advantage is that instead of this being a tort issue, a legal issue, it's more of a civil liability contractual issue. And that kind of limits the liability of the company a little more than it would be in an auditing sense. The cost, because these things aren't cheap, and there's not been a lot of research into the benefits of having this, so people just look at the price tag and say, well, what's the point? If I can just get a company to provide me assurance now and I have to wait a couple of months, so be it. Maybe that's just worth it. The lack of demand and usage of the assured information. So it's all well and good to have a continuous assurance program into place, but am I actually going to use this? Am I going to need to raise capital? Am I going to need to issue reports to OSHA or the FCC or all these different things? Or even if I'm a company that provides a service, are there companies that demand assurance on a continuous level? So that's a big question. But that also feeds into the incomplete understanding of the value. This is like a new idea, and people don't really understand if there is value or how much the value is to be continuously assured. And then also the fact that there are alternatives, for example, traditional assurance, and things like that, that may not require you to have this kind of monitoring in place. So then it gets all back to this big question of demand. Is there actually a demand for this that's out there? Not only on the part of, companies that want the continuous assurance, but do investors want this? Do they look at companies that have this kind of system in place in a different way than companies that don't? And right now there's no evidence that traders will even use this continuous data on a daily trade basis. The evidence suggests that most financial managers, I think the paper quoted the number at 50% in the study, don't even realize that quarterly information isn't audited as part of the annual audit. And of those financial advisors, most of them don't. The most specific type of financial statement that they even look at is quarterly trading data. So will they even want to use this information on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis? Management may use this kind of a thing for decision making, but the power of this is kind of not very well understood, and so it's still kind of unclear as to, well, will management actually demand this kind of a service in place? Then it will decrease the cost of specialized reports, but again, that's not really well understood. And when you combine that with the fact that the price tag to implement this is very, very, very high, then you can run into issues. Another issue is, so this is the questions raised in the paper. And another issue that kind of ties into that is, who bears this cost of installing? So does Apple have to pay for the system to be put in place, or does Ernst & Young have to pay for this system to be in place? And once the system is in place, that can also raise questions about independence. For example, if the company, has this system installed, if Apple goes to Ernst & Young and says, okay, install this system on our thing, and Ernst & Young says, okay, but you have to pay the price tag, well, guess what? Now Apple is really not going to want to change auditors. Even if Ernst & Young is providing a low quality of assurance, Apple's going to say, well, if I have to go from Ernst & Young to Deloitte, now I have to pay all this money to install a whole new system. And then if you do it the other way around, if all of a sudden Apple's paying for all this, well, is the system really independent? If Apple's the one that's paying the bill and Apple's the one maintaining the system, is it a system that an independent assurer can actually trust to give independent information? I mentioned earlier what the situation with the litigation risks. I think that the paper focuses a little too much on this, because I agree that it could be a problem that all of a sudden you're offering continuous assurance. If something goes wrong, now you're liable. But I think, while deep pockets would have people go after the assurer, I think that based on the way that the courts structure it as a part of contract law and not a part of torts, I don't think that it would be as major of a concern, especially not for the company that is implementing the program. The assurer might have that worry, but I think that in the long run, when these kinds of systems get put into place, the amount of money that they stand to make from something like this vastly outweighs any kind of litigation.
Yes, let's make a comment. Have you ever heard about a thing called virtual close? Cisco set up a thing called the virtual close, and the idea of the virtual close is that every day they close their books. Okay, it's a little bit like continuous reporting. Okay, and so they have done that. I think Microsoft copied them. There are several companies that copied them. And in reality, these ERPs are real time in many things. Payables, receivables, inventory, all of them have to be kept real time. So closing the books every day is not a big deal unless you are doing all the year-end adjustments or whatever. So but what happened is that Cisco had a bad year, and in that year they basically paid $2 billion back to the people in the supply chain. And what happened is that they had these agreements of supply chain, so when they are manufacturing something, the suppliers gave them the parts. And when they misestimated how much they would sell, the suppliers lost a lot of money. And they stepped in and I don't know if for contractual, etc., but they spent a lot of money. So their write-off on inventory was much larger than the value of the inventory. Now, what happened is the stockholders sued Cisco on the basis of virtual close, saying that you knew this because you closed every day, how come you didn't take any measures? So that kind of goes with one thing that Jamie is talking about here, is there a litigation danger? In general, I agree with Jamie, but your stockholders sometimes will take something good you are doing and try to get some money out of it. Actually, I don't know what was the outcome. I think there was some settlement that settled it, but I don't know.
So the next concern, who owns the output, also ties into cost of installment, right? Because if I'm a bank and I have this company that wants to take out all these loans, we'll use Apple as an example again. And so now the bank wants the information, Apple needs the information to get the loan, and Deloitte has to pay to install the system. So who's paying for this? If the bank pays for it, do they own the output? If Apple pays for it and they don't like the answers, can they withhold the output from the bank? All these different kind of questions start to be raised when you look at all this. And the real concern here is the startup cost to implement this into a system is like tremendous. And on top of that, the people that work at these assurance firms aren't technically trained for the most part. So are they even implementing their system into the ERP system correctly? Is it looking at the correct things and all of that kind of stuff?
Let me just say, you know what this is?
Smartwatch?
It's my Fitbit. This thing communicates with this thing, goes in my wrist, it counts how many steps I do, counts how many heartbeats I have, and how many hours I sleep, and any exercise program I do. Okay, and this goes from here to here, and to the website of Fitbit. Who owns this data?
Fitbit.
It's egregious, isn't it? I should own my own information. Of course, then if I own the information, they could charge me for doing things with the information, like running a diagnostic on my heartbeat. Okay, it's very interesting, and continuous auditing, which comes with continuous monitoring, because if you don't monitor, you can't continuously assure, has all these kind of data ownership type of questions, and etc. I think there'll be a lot of money in applications like this. I just usually predict things too early, and I would lose my pants if I invested on this. But I think my brother used to always say, you know, all these companies, you knew Amazon when they started, Apple when they started. Why didn't you buy the stock and make a lot of money? And I said, I don't have the risk coefficient for this. Okay. But I think there'll be a lot of products in this continuous auditing, continuous monitoring type of thing. And I'm starting to see with cybersecurity coming up that these are going to emerge sooner than I thought.
The other issue that I just kind of thought of, Miklos, is if you, like currently, if you use one company for your audit, you can choose to use another company for your assurance. But this kind of system would sort of prevent that. I mean, you're not going to pay to have Deloitte and KPMG both install systems on your computer so one can audit and one.
You just talked about one of the problems with Sarbanes-Oxley. It would be obvious. The right thing would be the same company do that, use the same systems, and issue an audit and issue a continuous assurance report. I actually, Andrea is working with me on this, correct? On the CAM stuff for leave. We are trying to put together what would be an opinion on a continuous audit be, how would it look? And now there is this thing, CAM, critical audit methods. And what is a critical audit method? Is in Europe, correct, Andrea?
It's implemented in the UK, yes.
In the UK, has been mandated that you don't only issue the 0-1 audit opinion, but you issue a report on critical audit methods. And it could be something that, like they do the risk statements on the 10K, everyone says basically the same risks in an industry, and they mean very little. No one could pick up any information of that, value of that information. But it could be that these critical audit methods might reveal a lot of things that the auditors look. We don't know, do we, Andrea?
I think it does have more detail than the.
Well, it will be more detail, but the question is going to be the details platitudes, or these details will have real information. So stay put. Before the end of the semester, Andrea and me will have a continuous auditing CAM report proposed. Yes?
Yes.
The other major issue is how does this get incorporated into current applications? That's because with assurance, there's kind of two types of things that they're trying to look at here. One is you have to go through the transactions that are related and say these transactions actually were good and things went properly. And two is the system that runs the transactions also has to be looked at, and is the system performing correctly and doing all its jobs. and you kind of have to link these two together when you put this system into an ERP or Oracle, whatever type of system you're mounting it onto. And can that even happen? I mean, is it practical to have it as a little applet within the ERP system? Would that even be independent, right? I mean, the company is the one that's operating the ERP system. If you add a little applet to it, is it now in control of the company, or is it separate because it's being monitored by a separate organization? Or do you just say, screw it, we're going to put a whole separate system into place that just monitors all this, but then you have questions about costs and all these separate things that come into play, and what if they're looking at data that the company wants to keep confidential that isn't part of the assurance that they're demanding from this? So it's all these different types of questions. And then finally, again, like I said, the independence of assurance providers gets brought in. As Miklos mentioned earlier, Sarbanes-Oxley does a good job of trying to better define auditor independence, and one of the things it prevents is consulting. So would this be considered a consulting type job that's independent from auditing? And if you provide this, can you then audit the client as well? Like, I don't really know. These things don't really have answers. So this paper mostly focuses on all these questions and all these different kind of concerns that come up with continuous assurance and are also relevant to continuous auditing, because as we know, auditing is a more specified type of continuous assurance, and hopefully we can answer some of these questions in future research and try to implement this into companies going forward. But the biggest takeaway that I got from the paper, the biggest hurdle that's going to have to be overcome, is this issue of cost and understanding of value. Because I think that companies have no understanding of how valuable these continuous type of programs could be. And because of that, they just look at the massive costs and all the risks and say it's not really worth it for me. And until we can kind of figure out a way to bring the cost down while trying to maintain independence and still show managers the value from doing these kinds of things, they're just going to be reluctant to do it. I mean, why change if I don't have to, right? That's it.
They say in Brazil is the country of the future, and it always will be. And I'm afraid that continuous auditing is the audit of the future and always be the audit of the future. That's a pessimistic way to look at the world, correct? Actually, you know what? I actually think that within my lifetime, hopefully it's longer than very short, I think we're going to see some migration in this direction. And it's not totally clear to me if it's going to be out of the audit domain or will be consultants that will be doing it and what's going to happen. I do think that the point in time 01 audit is doomed. And I'm afraid that what we are doing is palliative measure. You know what a palliative measure is? Palliative measure is like you have cancer and you take aspirin, so you don't have pains, but it doesn't resolve the problem. Okay, and I'm afraid that some of the evolutionary things that we are doing here are just going to postpone the problem. For example, I think XBRL, and I don't like to be exactly painted by this, but XBRL is a palliative measure. XBRL is not a measurement in electronic form of company performance. It's basically a translation into electronic media of a paper report. And it didn't resolve the problem that companies need to provide close to real-time reporting so you can trade on top of that report. What do you guys, accounting students, think of this? Should you be able to trade on top of reports? Oh, I see a hand going like this. Well, remember what financial statements were ways to manage your business in the medieval days, in the Pacioli days. Inventory and debt were the two things that they are mostly worried. And they kept books for managing debt. And then progressively they started managing personnel, they started managing supply chain, not only inventory but movement of inventory. But the financial reports stayed with financial numbers. But many years when you went to buy a company, you basically looked at what they had in physical assets. And why did the Security Act of 33 and 34 determine that companies be audited? Why? Why was it? Because there was the Big Depression, and it turned out that many companies were selling stock in the market, and they didn't exist. And the numbers that they published were totally irrelevant. They were numbers just for the purpose of pretending this company makes money, and so you are making money out of selling the stock, not making money out of the operation. So the whole idea of financial statements was to let the remote owner believe that the numbers that were given were truthful so they can allocate their money. Correct? But at that time, decisions were very slow. Now decisions, people trade on a minute-to-minute basis. And maybe we should be giving them information. Would be good for the economy, would be bad for economy. Give this information day-to-day, real-time, virtual close.
So that would be good for the economy, because then the point of an efficient economy market is that all information is disseminated immediately to all investors. So in that case, it would be. The question of demand for these kind of services there's not a lot of demand or not tons of demand simply because people, what good is it to have every day knowing that the company's books are being audited if I can only look at the company information once a quarter? So the demand will come if regulators or companies start moving to, instead of releasing financial information on a quarterly basis, on a daily or weekly basis. Then all of a sudden continuous monitoring is huge business because you need to maintain this. And I think that, in my opinion, that's the way to go, because then exactly that happens. All the stockholders have all the information that they need, and the markets can efficiently price stocks correctly.
What do you guys think? I heard you. What do you guys think? I want my accounting students to say something.
Yeah, I agree with Jamie. It creates demand for those assurance.
I want to hear the accounting students. What do you four think of this? What was the R squared? We had this guy from, where was he from Wharton come here last Friday. What was the R squared he had?
Result.
2.5%. Even lower than that, correct? He had the whole set of it. And I asked him that, but I didn't say anything else because I didn't want to torpedo his visit. Okay? Professor Sudin, if he was here before he retired, would say this is meaningless. Okay? And when I was doing my PhD, Ball and Brown was a new paper. The whole market studies was out of Ball and Brown. And Ball and Brown were relating market value to accounting numbers at 40% to 60% adjusted R squares. Now it's 2%. What do you think of that? What does that say?
The relationship is so low.
Yeah, but what does it say that the relationship is low? Say that people don't use accounting information for their trading decisions. Go ahead, speak.
Sorry, I was.
I mean, just as you said, accounting information is not that relevant in the valuation of the company.
Yes, it became much. You ask my son, who is a buy-side analyst, he uses all kind of information. He still says he needs financial statements, but Okay, and now what would happen if this information becomes real time? You see, this is the other thing I asked the guy who came here. I actually liked him. I would love to hire him, but it's not that easy. I asked him, 80% of trades are automatic. What does that say? And he said, I was an electronic trader, but then he didn't say what he did. And a lot of these electronic trading algorithms, chart is algorithm. Did the shoulder go down? Did the shoulder go up? It's very fast trading. And did you notice that his paper didn't have any mention of usage of information? It was all about rapidity and volume of trade. Did you notice that? A lot of the studies deal with you publish your earnings, is there a leakage, etc., but not his. And also his window was 5 minutes. So I think that's a strong argument for a more continuous reporting. Do companies want that? Do you like to be graded?
If the tuition is a little bit lower than the tuition.
But do you like to be graded? That's the question. No one likes to be graded. Managers like to maneuver the earnings hopefully within reason, within the law. They don't want to be evaluated on real-time inventory or on real-time sales, correct? Real-time goodwill means nothing, so forget about that one. But I think if your investor had the chance to look at workforce, supply chain, intellectual property, some of them in a shorter written, what I talk about when use auditing is always about the pulse of the business, sometimes faster, sometimes closer. Very real-time thing, only serve for certain things. And then I give all these AT&T examples. But anyway, that's something for you to think. Accounting jobs in academia still pay more than most other fields.
So the investors know
A little bit louder?
The investors know the real-time information of the company, but like the company's competitors will also know.
There is a chasm between information needs and information provision. Now, if you say this to a company, you said, I cannot give the data of my clients because the other competitors will try to steal my clients. I can't give the data of my suppliers because the other competitors will use my suppliers to steal my information. Is that true? Yes, it's true. They would. But when Security Act 3334 came in, you know what companies were complaining? I am not going to give my net income to other companies, or they will come to my industry and make money, and my profit will go down. Same thing, same exact thing. Wonder what's going to happen, Jimmy.
So your son, when he looks at all these different factors and not very much at financial statements, is that because the financial statements are released every so often and are therefore not capturing these things? And when it's continuously done, maybe he'll just look at that.
I would love you to ask him that. Which brings me, we need to stop here, brings me to one thing. Decades ago or years ago, I used to take everyone to my house in Long Island for a Sunday or a Saturday. And we had a picnic, had a class, had fun. Okay? The class became huge and my house didn't fit. And the other thing that happened is I moved farther in Long Island. And going for an hour and 20 minutes drive back and forth is 2.5 works. Going 2.5 hours in the LIE is 6 hours when everything counts is too much. So I have to figure out, I'm thinking of maybe inviting you over to my house in Manhattan, which is a little bit closer. And we eat sushi or do something in my house, say hello to Mochi, and etc. So I'm going to try to organize something this year, because the class is manageable in size now. So we can do that. Next week, Helen is going to be here. Okay, you guys be brave, and she's better in that stuff than I am. So I'm very happy she's doing this. I'm very grateful to her. I have to teach her classes for her, okay, to make up for it. The following week, I won't be back from Singapore until Friday, and I would love to have the class early morning Friday. Is that a possibility for you? You guys have a conflict?
If we don't have signal,
Yeah. I am going to work on seminar, and if the seminar is in New Brunswick, we'll have two alternatives. One alternative is the seminar be in Newark, and that's good. The other alternative is that you guys will put the TV on, and you see the seminar from here. Okay, I have been working on that. I get defeated every time I try this. I find it ridiculous to send 30 PhD students to New Brunswick. Waste the whole Friday. But just because a couple of faculty in New Brunswick don't want to drive all the way. Okay, so I find that ridiculous. I lose that battle every year. But this year it looks a little bit more promising. I hope. They're also talking about a bus.
Yeah, there's no public I mean, it's difficult to get there.
Yeah, you can get there, but they're talking about a bus. We've done a bus before. You know what happened? No one took the bus. Okay, so it's that type of problem. The AI students, we tend to hold the seminars here. So, etc. But I think this year I have a good chance, and definitely next Friday, if you guys don't mind having a class from 8:30 to 10:30, then we'll make up the extra hour. We'll do it here. Okay, and we'll talk to Barbara, make sure we have a class soon. Hopefully this one. Okay, and never hesitate to email me. I'm not very good with telephone, but I do answer my email. If I don't answer, it's because I didn't get it in general. Okay, or it might be you ask me a question that I couldn't respond, and I have it in my to-do list. Okay, I always said, try to read the papers. The papers are very useful and will be very good for your PhD exam. They'll be perfect for your PhD exam. And furthermore, going to give you encyclopedic knowledge of auditing. And in the process, the accounting students, now the AI students, will learn a lot about technology. Okay. And I do appreciate any ideas I get for the papers. You'll see this semester we have several discussions of things, of papers that are coming out. Okay?